I'm Spook Spann.
And I'm Brian Stevens.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment,
a podcast about how chasing big whitetails has become a religion to us. The plan is to get into the head of one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet
and to share over 40 plus years of hunting experience with you. Big bucks, life, and America. Here we go.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment, brought to you by Spook Nation. I'm Brian Stevens here. We got Spook Spann, my brother. What is the good word today?
Oh, man, just happy to be here. It's getting that time of the year. Gobblers are chasing each other around, starting to gobble some, strut, so it's not going to be long till it's going to be showtime.
Man, I cannot wait. We actually have youth weekend here down in Florida, and next weekend is opening weekend, and my son Tyler's coming down, and we're going to film his first Osceola
that'll be awesome.
Turkey hunt.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait. He is just beyond excited. They're gobbling their heads off and strutting. So
good.
I do love March.
Yeah.
It is a
well,
great
it's
time
like
of
March.
year.
March is like kind of like the official kickoff of spring. And so, with turkey season and spring and the fishing gets good. So, yeah, everything just kicks off the summer with March.
No question about it. The other thing I know for you in particular, March has a special meeting that I don't know a lot of people know about, that you and your dad were involved in a very serious helicopter crash on March 5th, 2004. That was life-changing.
Yeah.
I thought it would be appropriate. I know you thought it would be appropriate. You reflect this time of year, every year upon that. So let's jump into the accident and maybe give a little bit of background as why you were even on that trip, what you were hoping to accomplish, and then what transpired, and then obviously getting towards what the outcome was.
Yeah, so what started out is to be a kind of like a hunting trip of a lifetime. I had actually, it's kind of a long story how I came about this. Is actually by accident that I found out about this hunt. It was a cancellation hunt, and it was last minute, and there was a hunt became available in Kyrgyzstan for the big Marco Polo sheep. And
Nice.
Actually, I dreamed about going on this hunt, but I didn't really want to go by myself, and I just didn't see my dad really going for it. We had to be gone for like 2.5 weeks, or maybe even a little bit longer. And so I didn't think he would go for it. And when I mentioned it to him, he just kind of got excited and said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," I was so happy. I can't believe he said that, And so it was really awesome that he got excited, about it. And it was funny, man, he started training, and, because we were going to be up there 14 to 16,000 feet.
Yeah.
And that's some pretty high elevation hunting, We're going to be
cold.
Yeah, and cold. In the Tianshan Mountains there in Kyrgyzstan, right on the China border. And, I was proud of him. He started going to the gym and working out and running on the treadmill and doing some things to try to get his body prepared. And Dad was always in pretty good shape because he worked all the time, but that sheep shape is a different definition.
For sure.
So he started working on himself, and we got our weapons ready. And it was so funny. There was a list that they give you that you can kind of plan what you need for the trip, so that you don't have too much luggage, because you can't haul too much stuff into the mountains. You kind of got to be as conservative as possible. So I loaded my stuff up the day to go to the airport, and I knew what it weighed. And I got over to Dad's, and I started loading his stuff, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what have you got in here?" His bags weighed like double what mine did. I was like, "We're gonna have some serious baggage fees when we get there."
Yep.
So there were some, our restrictions weren't quite as stringent. Our bag restrictions and weights were a little different, and fees weren't as high, but still. And so I'll come back to that part of that story later. Just remember heavy bags, my dad's heavy bags. But we're super excited. It's a lot of traveling. You go to LA, and then to, I think it was Frankfurt, Germany, and then to Moscow, and then to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. And then you've got almost like a day ride to where you actually go into the mountains, and then another half a day into the camp, into the mountains. So it takes a long time to get there.
Yep, that's a hike.
And it was pretty cool. You know, the hunts are set up through the government. So when we got there, we met the vice president of Kyrgyzstan, and we had dinner with him, and it was cool. We had a translator, and it was funny. The guy the consultant that helped set up the hunt, he said, "Oh, you need to take him some Tennessee Jack Daniel whiskey. They like that." You know, so that's the only time I've ever been in a liquor store in my life. I went in there to buy.
Buying with a purpose.
Yeah. I'd go in and buy some Jack Daniels for the Kyrgyzstan vice president. But anyways,
very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But, you know, we get into the hunt, and it's just really majestic. I mean, I can't say enough about the scenery, the mountains. And it's funny, very first day we rode about 3 or 4 hours up into a certain place in the mountains, and there was a big ram just walking up the side of the mountain, and he was a little bit too far away. He had spotted us before we saw him, and so we could tell it wasn't going to work out, because where we had to get to and the rate he was moving, we basically just watched him and figured we'd come up with another plan later. And my dad turned and looked at me, and we were sitting up on the horse. He said, "If we don't kill anything, it was worth it just to see this right here." You know, it was so beautiful.
So you guys, just step back a little bit to give some context. So you guys, are you at a base camp, and then you've got horses, and you're taking the horses to wherever
so
you're
you got a
hunt
base camp
each day?
Exactly. And so you're just taking horses out each day.
Yep.
Now, we did have canvas tents if we needed to spike out somewhere.
Got it.
Because there was the chance that the sheep would be far enough away that we would have to. So that was always an option. But the hunt, you know, you're basically, like you said, you're just riding out every day. And of course, these guys have been hunting there for years and scouting, and so they have ideas of where the sheep like to hang out, where their food sources are, where the mountain sides. And there were some patches of mountains that didn't have snow on them, and a lot of times that's where we'd find the sheep. But about the fourth or fifth day, they said, "Hey, we're going to go on a big ride. It's going to be long. It's going to take probably 8 hours to get there on horseback, and then we'll hunt, and then we'll decide whether we're going to try to spike out or come back that night."
How is your dad doing on the horse? Because if you don't ride a horse a lot, that's hard on a person.
Yeah, he did good.
That's awesome.
They had decent saddles. It wasn't like those Mexico saddles I've sat in before. There was straight wood. Yeah, they had pretty good saddles. These horses were small. They were smaller. Sometimes the snow was deep enough, my feet would drag the snow. But man, they were so tough. I mean, these horses were tough. I mean, they were built for working.
Got it.
It was really, really a unique experience. The hunt went about as good as it could possibly go. I mean, on the fourth or fifth day, we came up on a band of 9 rams, and we actually had came up on another bigger band of rams, and Dad and one of the guides they stopped there. We're going to try to strategize on how to get into position, and then we went on up the canyon just looking for some more rams, and we found a band of 9 together. And when we first looked at them, I actually had Clay Lancaster there that had come with me. Clay and his family are big-time outfitters out of Canada, and they do a lot of sheep hunting, and me and Clay had become friends, and so he just wanted to come along and video, and he was going to shoot an Ibex while he was there. And we're looking at these rams, and the guy didn't think any of them were shooters. And I had my spotting scope there, and I was really looking really tight at one of them, and he turned, and I saw this incredible mass. And I told Clay, I said, look at that ram in the middle, right in the middle of the rest of the sheep.
Yep.
And he just went crazy. Oh, my gosh, it's a giant. But the reason the guide kind of missed it a little bit, because he was broomed off a little bit and wasn't quite as long as he normally would have been. And he had snow stacked up on the end of both horns. Probably had
So it
three.
was hiding some of
Yeah,
his
so
horn.
you just couldn't see it good until you really
Yep.
and zoomed in on my scope. And so Clay's like, yes, that's the one, that's the one. And they were like close to 400 yards. And I got down and raked the snow out, got my bipod ready. They had started to sense that something was going on. We had gotten in a little bit of a rush there trying to get ready, and had kind of balled up a little bit and started moving. And he got in a position where I had a good shot. Finally, the other sheep were out of the way, and I whacked him pretty good. He actually turned and came back down the side of the mountain towards us, and I shot him another time just to make sure we were good.
Yep.
And it was really almost like a surreal moment, because I just was something I never dreamed I'd ever get to do.
Yeah.
And
that's so special.
I'd never get to see. And it was, by the time we got pictures taken and got him skinned out and quartered up and packed on the horses and all that, it was right at dark.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get back that night. We rode horses all night. We decided not to spike out, and it cold. It got 40 below that night, and 8 hours on a horse and 40 below was a long night, I could tell you.
Wow. Yes, it is.
And I tell you,
that's a different kind of tough right there.
We had good clothes, which is awesome, but I tell you, what made a huge difference was having hand warmers.
Okay.
I know it sounds kind of corny and simple and but having those hand warmers in your pockets and then the foot warmers in your shoes, in your boots,
Absolutely,
just made it so much more tolerable.
Yeah.
But
okay.
At least the wind wasn't blowing, and of course, we were all dead tired the next day. We didn't do nothing the next day. I think it was like a day or two later, we ran into 4 rams while we were actually going Ibex hunting, and it was really cool. We were tracking these sheep in the snow, and we came to a spot where we could see the tracks go off in a little valley, but there were no tracks coming up the other side.
Okay.
And the guide, he stopped everyone, and he got off his horse and he went and peeked over the edge, and they were like 20 yards.
Wow.
And he got Dad off the horse real quick, and about that time here they come up on the other side, and they weren't literally 40 yards from us.
My gosh.
And Dad smacked the biggest one out of that group, and so it was
nice.
That was a cool.
Absolutely.
It's like I've said about having other people celebrate your success and my cameraman being excited on different hunts, things. Seeing Dad's elation and somewhat disbelief and that we were there and that he had done this. Yeah. He was just so excited.
How special for him. That's just for him to be there with his son in a place that you both probably never dreamed that you'd get a chance to hunt, and him to see you, fill a tag of a lifetime, and then him having the opportunity to hunt himself was like, what a great experience.
Yeah, it was priceless. He was so happy. I don't know if I've ever seen him grin so big. It was just awesome.
That's pretty good if he's grinning bigger than maybe a big old bass. That's saying something.
He was just elated. I think sometimes my dad thought that he was at the age where he wouldn't be able to hang. He wouldn't be able to do whatever it took to get it done. And he was always, my dad was tough, hardworking, old-fashioned. He just worried that something would happen that he wouldn't be able to complete the hunt or something. He was worried about the elevation. He was worried about his physical condition. And he, like I said, Dad was in good shape, but sheep shape is different. Thank goodness we had horses, and that is what we hunted off of. A few times we had to hike a little bit, but it wasn't that much. And it's so funny. I eat healthy, and I'm kind of a picky eater. When you get, and I never liked sardines. I've never been a sardine eater, but Dad loves them. My dad just loved them, hot sauce and saltine crackers. Yeah. My dad loves sardines. And we get up on the mountain the first day at lunchtime, and they break out and that's what they've got.
He's like, can this trip get any better?
Sardines, crackers is what the lunch menu is. And I'm just, but what? It's kind of funny when you're up there and you're cold and hungry, all of a sudden they tasted way better than they do back home in Tennessee.
Yeah,
I promise you.
absolutely.
But he was loving it. As far as he's concerned, it was apple pie. You know, it was just, but we had a really good time. I tell you another story that I like telling, and it's funny. So these Mongolian guides, every time something, they want to celebrate something or they're happy about something, they want to take a shot of vodka. Just vodka all the time, you know.
Yep.
They're like, spooky, vodka. And I was like, no, I don't, you know. And the translator told them that I didn't drink, you know, I've never drank before in my life. They said, kill Big Ram, vodka. I said, okay.
All right.
Yeah, all right. So I killed my big ram. So that next night, after we had just basically stayed in camp all day, so we're having somewhat of a celebratory dinner, and they're so excited. Spooky, vodka. They're just like really putting a lot of pressure on me. So we've got a little table that we're eating dinner, and I think there's like 8 of us at the table, and somebody's sitting on one end, I'm sitting on the other, and Daddy's sitting right beside me. And then there's a wall behind me. So I'm sitting at the end of the table. And I'm thinking in my head, I was like, man, I dread doing this. It's going to kill me. I know it's going to burn like fire. You know? But I'd always watched them, you know, it is clear. They throw it back, slam them glasses down. Yep. So I said, okay, I got a plan. So I got this. They come up with some, you know, blah, 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 big ram, spooky. And they call me Spooky instead of Spook.
Yep.
And so we toast, and when everybody kind of watched everybody, when I saw them tilt their heads back, I just threw it right down behind my back, right down in the floor behind my back, you know, and slammed that glass down, shook my head like it really bothered me. You know, they like, yay, spooky. So that night we're in the little room where me and Dad's staying. So this was just like an old block building that they had built years before, and that's where we stayed. And they had coal, so they had hauled coal up there in the summer, and that's what you put in the stove, and that's so burn coal for
that's your energy source.
Yeah, that was our heat. But anyways, Daddy's like, man, it's like you handled that vodka better than I thought you would, because my dad really knew that I'd never drank, you know.
Yeah.
I said, shoot, are you kidding me? I didn't drink it. I said, I threw it right down behind my head, dumped it right in the floor. I said, they never even noticed. He looked at me with the most dumbfounded look on his face. He went, dang, I wish I'd have thought of that. He's like,
that's priceless right there.
That's pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
So just little things like that. So, all right, going back to the luggage, here's the next funny thing. So we get there, we have lugged this luggage from one side of the world to the other side of the world.
Do you even know it's in these bags? It's so much.
I still don't understand what it is in there. As far as I'm concerned, he's put 20 bricks in each bag.
All right.
And so he opens up his bag when we get there the first day, and he starts setting out Tupperware containers full of Twinkies, Nutty Buddies, oatmeal cream pies, honey buns, everything that you can imagine of that type of treat. He's got the bag full, every bag full of them.
Sardines and Nutty Buddies. He is in heaven.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. But
you don't eat any of that, so that was clearly just for him.
I was like, here's the problem right here. I see what the deal is. What? I was like, this wasn't on the list. This is why your bags are so heavy. But it was so funny. But I tell you, you know, that food, you know, our food wasn't, I mean, it was just okay. Yeah. So those treats really came in handy. I fell way off the wagon for those 2 or 3 weeks eating sweets because of the other stuff we were having to eat. But it was funny. But the hunt went great. We actually killed a couple Ibex after that, which was awesome. I got a pretty cool story about the Ibex. So we were struggling just a little bit with the Ibex. We were seeing them. We were kind of in bad position, bad luck a couple of times. And one day we had a big group of Ibex, probably 40 or 50 of them, smell us. And they just, I couldn't believe it, man. They got so jacked up. I thought, well, shoot, they'll just run over the mountain and they'll be fine. We watched them, and they went, I mean, up to like 18, 19,000 feet, just out of the stratosphere.
Isn't it crazy, like how fast they can do that?
Oh,
too?
they were just like, I was like, dang, and there was a couple like superstars in there.
Yeah.
I mean, super, super big ones. And so I was disappointed. Because I had a couple times I could have shot at like 600 yards, and I felt confident in that shot, but I didn't take it because I just felt like that if we just kept playing our cards right, we'd eventually get a better shot, and Dad would get a better shot too. We could kill two at one trip, and it didn't work. So we're coming back to the camp, and we just look up on the mountain here in one spot, and there's a male and two females just out by themselves. And
Okay.
this one male was a big one, big shooter, and they were, at the time I was guessing, they were 800-900 yards off, and Clay was like, dude, you might as well try it. You ain't got nothing to lose, you know?
Yep.
So I got down and raked out, and they were headed. They saw us, but they weren't too upset. They were just heading up the side of the mountain. And they stopped, and I shot, and I was trying to just guess on elevation. So I didn't have turrets back then. I was shooting a 300 Jarrett. And on the third shot, one of the Mongolian guides said "schnick," which I knew meant snow. And I went like this, and he had seen the snow come up between his legs, under his belly.
So you had a
So
bearing on him.
I was like, okay, and, I had a little something to go on then. And the fourth shot, I mean, I center punched him.
Love it.
And they went crazy. They were jumping up and down and yelling and screaming. And we ended up having to take ranges off of two different spots. And we finally figured out he was right somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 yards.
Wow.
So that was really awesome. And of course, they used that as an excuse to break out the vodka again. But I didn't participate that time. It's going to be harder to trick them when it was out there in the.
They're going
They're going to figure me out, so I just let them have their fun. But so that was pretty cool. So we had a great hunt. I mean, a good time. We enjoyed the people. We was about as cool of an experience as you could expect. And we had some days when it would warm up, and the snow actually melted. At times, had melted quite a bit.
Okay.
So we were in a position where we were getting in that time period where it was time for their spring to start coming on and the snow to melt. But then just bad timing, the day that we're supposed to get in the truck, and then they had like an old 6-wheel drive Army truck with the canopy on the back, And so we pile all our stuff in there, and we're headed out. And it's snowing, but it's no big deal. It's been snowing off and on while we've been there. No big deal. Well, what we didn't know was it was a huge springtime snowstorm that we were driving into. And the snow got heavier and heavier and thicker. And we're into the nighttime driving, and we're getting stuck in drifts, having to dig ourselves out. And we're kind of starting to get probably at around 2 in the morning. We're starting to get kind of exhausted. And then finally the snow gets so deep, we can't really see the road, the trail that we're coming out, which is really nothing more than like an old logging road or pig road. And the bumper's pushing snow. I mean, it's just, and so then we're just stranded. We're stranded out there in the middle. We lack probably, I think, around 12 miles getting to the China border checkpoint where the main road was at, so that we could go on back to Bishkek. And so there we are, just stuck. And we spent the next 2 days trying to get in touch with somebody, because they didn't have any means. There was no strategy or plan in their scenario for a worst case situation. They were just looking at us and the fact that we had a satellite phone and depending on us to figure out how to get ourselves out.
Wow.
And here we are in a third world country. We don't know anybody over there. So we end up getting a hold of our consultant. He gets in touch with, and then we also got in touch with the Clay's family, and they got in touch with the American Embassy, and they just so happened to, the timing worked out. It snowed for, I think we were there, I can't remember if we were there 2.5 days or 3.5 days.
So you guys just made a base camp at the truck and hung there for 2 days.
The camp was just the truck. We didn't have any tents or nothing. And we didn't carry any food with us because we thought we were going to be out in a few hours.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have any food. So we took Ibex and cut it up in little squares and slid it on clothes hanger wire and cooked it with a blowtorch for 2.5 days. That's what we ate.
Wow. Okay.
And, at night, it was, cold. It was down 35, 40 below at night. And, all you got's basically just that canopy and that, of the truck.
That's you're making it sound like not that big of a deal. That's a big deal. You're 40 below and you are there, your morale and to stay focused and all of that. That's a tough situation.
Well, there was no morale gone.
That's what I'm saying. You got no morale.
It was gone.
You're stressed. You're scared.
Yeah, Dad.
You got to keep your head about you.
Yeah, and Dad doesn't handle those situations very well. And I think he was just nervous about his age and what could happen and how long can this go on.
Totally understandable.
Because we don't have any idea how long this snow's going to last and how long we're going to be there. And we're basically, I talk about eating the Ibex. Oh, well, you had something to eat. Well, yeah, but we didn't know how long an Ibex could feed us. It wasn't going to be very long, So we were trying to ration that as much as we could. I lost, through the course of the whole deal, I think I lost 18 pounds. And so it was just, it was a difficult time. We're sitting there one day and I hear something and I just tell everybody to be quiet. And you could hear faint sound of a helicopter. And sure enough, here comes a big Russian M80 helicopter in. And the vice president of Kyrgyzstan is on the chopper. So they were concerned about what they were going to find in the situation. We had given them the GPS coordinates when we called in. So they knew your coordinates. And they knew the route that that the hunters always took to get in and out of the mountains. So that all that came together fine. So they come in, we're happy. They got sub sandwiches and water and milk and apples, and it's like, shoot, first thing I did was sit there and eat for 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
And so we're feeling good, happy, and everything's cool, and get ready to take off. Or load up.
Is the weather cleared right now?
It's kind of just like spotty clouds with some snow and then sun, and so it was just kind of back and forth. But
got it.
But for sure better than it had been in days. And it's funny, we go to get on the helicopter, and they insisted that Dad and I get on first. Okay. So we're standing there, and Dad always called me Slick. He said, "Get on, Slick." So I get on and I sit in so there's a few seats down. It's a big helicopter. These helicopters are big. So there's a few seats down both sides in the back part of the helicopter. And so I sit in the first seat. Well, Dad always sits with me. Always. Of course he would. We always sit together. And it's funny, he kind of looked and checked up a little bit, and he for some reason, Dad went to the back of the helicopter where it was smaller and less room and a little more crunched and crowded. And he went to the back and sat, and I was kind of like, what? I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I tell you, my dad's mentality is, Dad, like, his thoughts were, well, when you load an airplane, you're supposed to go to the back and then come to the front. Well, I didn't go back there because it was so small. I was the tallest person by far than anybody else, and so my legs were longer, and so I sat down up front just for have a little bit more room.
Yep.
And so anyways, okay, well, no big deal. So everybody gets on, and we got a couple of the guides and the translator and the taxidermist and the government official and 2 crew members and the pilot and co-pilot. Well, so it's a pretty good load, and we got all our stuff in there and the guns and the sheep and our luggage, and it's piled up. And I even asked Clay, I was like, man, I'm just looking at this just in my mind, common sense. I was like, this feels like we're overloaded.
Yeah.
But he's like, well, they seem to think it's okay. And they did. I paid attention to the pilot and co-pilot, and they were really, neatly dressed, well-groomed, articulate, professional-looking people. Yep. And this was the chopper that they had been flying the vice president around in the country with. So I was like, okay, it's not so bad. Well, so we lift off, and probably 8, 10, 12 minutes into the flight, I hear the pilot say something, and the vice president said, glasses. And I had some sunglasses on. And he said the pilot wanted them. And the vice president did speak some broken English, so we could communicate. And the translator was there. And so I handed him my glasses for the pilot. The next thing I remember looking out the window, and the little guy, one of the guides, Mongolian guides, was sitting next to me. And he was really excited because it was his first time ever on a helicopter, and it was my first time. He didn't speak any English, but we communicated a little bit, and he was he thought it was awesome. That's the last thing I remember. Apparently, from what they told us, was that the pilot got vertigo and lost perception of the skyline and the snow line because it had clouded up a little bit and started snowing a little bit again, and he just flew it into the top of the mountain. And I got knocked unconscious on impact. So I think what happened.
So how did you guys crash? The impact was hitting the mountain, then you crashed, or walk us through that?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. We hit, so what they said is we hit the top of the mountain in that one spot. But what I think he did, based on my injuries and other people's injuries, I think he saw when he was fixing to hit, and he turned the helicopter. And when he did, because it smashed him, killed him on impact.
Okay.
So, and the co-pilot got thrown out the window, or partially out the window. I don't even know how in the world he survived. And so then when it turned sideways, then it just went to rolling.
Okay.
And Dad was awake during the whole thing. He remembers it all, but he doesn't remember exactly like what happened on the impact because it was so startling and sudden.
Correct.
But what I realized was that my whole left side of my body was hurt the worst. So what I envisioned must have happened is the pilot turned the helicopter right before it hit, and then it slammed us up against the wall on the other side. Okay. And I had broken teeth on this side, some cuts, and my shoulder and elbow and knee and ankle and hip, everything on my left side was hurt. So I know I hit something on my left side, but I had 7 broken ribs, and they were on both sides and in the back. So, that was what was causing me the most pain. Sure. I had a big turkey's foot in the top of my head, 3 big gashes, and then my teeth messed up. One of them was busted all the way up into the root. I could just take my tongue and move it around. And I had a lot of blood coming out my mouth, and I couldn't figure out at the beginning where it's coming from. And my ribs were hurting me so bad and I was bleeding. I thought I was bleeding internally. I was trying to figure out what was going on. But going back just a little bit, I was knocked unconscious, and Dad said he was yelling for me, and I wasn't answering him. And he said he just looked down and said, "Lord, please let him answer me." He said he didn't much more than get it out of his mouth. I said, "What happened?" And he was just like elated that I was talking. Oh. I don't remember that, but that's just what he told me.
Okay.
And he said, "I don't know." He said we crashed and we got to get out of here because he said he could smell fuel real strong.
Yeah.
And the kind of one of the weird things was when we stopped rolling, all the landing gear off the bottom of the helicopter had been ripped off, and we were laying on the side, and there was a lot of snow inside the fuselage. It's like a foot of snow inside, and I really think that that's what kept it from blowing up or sparking or whatever. Is that snow, I think, just coming in where the landing gear got ripped off, and as we were sliding, that snow was coming in inside.
What's going on? Tell me the other people. So the main pilot's killed, the other pilots through the roof. What's going on with the other people?
And the guy that was sitting in the chair next to me where Dad should have been sitting, got killed. Excuse me, I could tell that his head was turned all the way around to one side, and his leg was turned all to one side, which means it broke his neck and his leg, and looked like his back was probably broken. So it just tore him up. And he was kind of a smaller guy. We were in there. We had a 55-gallon drum of fuel in there, the sheep, guns, luggage, and it's just rolling in there like being in a clothes dryer, you know. And then
the vice president, did he survive?
He did. So it broke him up. It broke his leg, broke some ribs, broke his arm. He messed his face up some, but he did survive. Okay. And the co-pilot, oh my gosh, I'm not exaggerating. It looked like something in a movie. It looked like that they had taken a sledgehammer to his face. I mean, he was just mangled. I mean, just bloody. When we were trying to get out of the helicopter, and I didn't think I could even stand up, but Daddy and Clay was trying to get me out of the helicopter. And that's the other cool thing. So Clay went to the back of the helicopter too and sat with Dad, which was awesome, which worked out awesome because the back of the helicopter was a lot smaller.
Yeah.
So when we hit and when we were rolling,
you weren't rattling around as
much.
They
weren't the centrifugal force in such a small area. You know, it messed. Daddy had a big scrape here, and Clay, it busted Clay's eye and some stuff. But as a whole, they weren't hurt near as bad, which was really good. And so they're trying to get me out, and I look and I can see the co-pilot just drag. So his legs broke and his face is smashed, and he's screaming and crying, and he's dragging himself across the snow, kind of in shock, and I think afraid that the helicopter was going to blow up. And there was a couple of the guides. I mean, there was 4 or 5 people that I didn't think would live through the night. Now, they were alive when we were found, and they was alive when I left, when Daddy and I left. But here's where the problem was, is that we had run our batteries down on our satellite phone while we were stranded in the blizzard.
Okay.
So we didn't have any way to communicate with anybody. Nothing. Well, Clay had heard that if you take a satellite battery and you can create some friction, that you might can get enough battery to make a short emergency call, which I never would have thought that was possible. So he sat and rubbed that battery on his leg for probably an hour, just as fast as he could, just going back and forth. He warmed the battery up with his hand, of course, and then was just rubbing it on his pants. He stuck it in a satellite phone, and the last person that he had talked to was his dad, and he just pressed send. Didn't dial any numbers, anything. He just pressed send. And his brother answered the phone. He said, "We crashed," and he gave him half the coordinates, and it went dead. So it lasted about 4 seconds or something, 4 or 5 seconds. So his brother called my family. Then they got in touch with the embassy, and then the process started. They started calling some politicians and some people. The ambassador briefed the president. Bush was president at the time, and they briefed him on it. And he just told them, he said, so fortunately for us, there just so happened to be 3 U.S. Border Patrol officers in Kyrgyzstan training the Kyrgyz military how to maintain and operate snowmobiles and four-wheelers, which we had give them at the time to help patrol for bin Laden. So at that time, that's when we were looking for bin Laden, which your brother, I'm sure, knew a lot about. And they thought he might be in Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan or one of those places over there. And so that's why they were over there. And so the embassy just got in touch with those guys and told them, what had happened and to come in and see if they could find us. And they took them 26 hours to find us. So we had to spend the night again out there that night with it 35 or 40 below in 3 feet of snow. And thank goodness I had some Tylenol PMs in my bag.
I don't know how much Tylenol PM's doing for 3 broken ribs.
I don't know, man. It was tough.
Anyways, okay.
Yeah, I tell you,
do whatever you can.
Yeah, and I couldn't lay down. My ribs.
No, I can't imagine the pain you're in, Spook.
Yeah, I couldn't lay down.
And cold.
Yeah, so Dad and Clay kind of built me a place to sit, and we just pulled.
Were you having a hard time breathing at all? Did anything?
Yeah, but if I could set up and if I could just set up and take real shallow breaths, I could do it without hurting. But if I took a deep breath or coughed or sneezed or anything like that, it was like you sticking a knife in me.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. But I could feel one of the ribs punching. I don't know if it was punching in my lung or punching in a muscle or what. I could feel one of them like just touching something that was hurt.
Yeah.
And so the calmer I could stay and the easier I could breathe and the less I moved, the better that was. And so, yeah, there we are. We just stuck there all night. And I tell you another crazy thing, man, and I wished I still had them. I don't know what happened to them. I had 3 Jarrett bullets in my pocket when we crashed.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember what happened exactly. I don't know if we heard somebody. We thought we heard somebody, and we were going to shoot the gun, hoping that they might hear us. And I went to trying to get the bullets out, and when I did, they were bent bad enough the bolt wouldn't close.
Wow.
Now you think about that. You put a rifle shell in your pocket on your side, and you let me hit it with a 2-pound sledge hard enough to put a dent in it and bend it that it won't close in a gun.
Well, the fact that your leg or femur wasn't shattered or broken is baffling.
How is
that kind of pressure?
How is that even possible?
Yeah.
I showed Daddy and Clay, and they were just like, holy crap,
Yeah.
It was just insane. I have no explanation for that. I have no explanation for it. And so anyways, the next day, Clay and one of the guides that wasn't hurt much either decided they were going to try to walk out. So I got him some shells. Gave him my gun, and they thought that they could figure out how to get out and try to get some help because we just didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And they had been gone for probably 5 or 6 hours when we heard the snowmobiles coming. They had only made it about a mile in 5 or 6 hours. The snow was so deep. It was just hard, very difficult.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the Border Patrol guys had gotten off their snowmobiles once just to glass and look off a high spot, and Clay saw them. They heard them and saw them, and they were watching them through the binoculars, and when they got off and took their helmet off, he shot. And he could tell they heard it, and they was trying to figure out and pointing, and they was kind of pointing the wrong direction, so he shot again. And then he shot again, and they figured it out and saw them, and they went to him. And so then they just tracked them back they took them on to the China border checkpoint where there was some soldiers and personnel and some shelter, and then came back and came into us. And
they needed the room.
Yeah, for sure. And so when they came in, I said, hey guys, I said, there's a few people here that I don't think's going to make it. And so I said, just take them first. I said, I think I'm going to be okay. And believe it or not, by the next day, I mean, I don't know whether it's panic or I don't think it was panic. I just think it was, I didn't seem to feel as stressed about my condition the next day.
You're probably happy to be alive,
Yeah,
too, Spook.
I was, but, and I could hear them moaning and crying all night, and they were in just horrible pain. I'm pretty sure one of them's back was broken. And so I said, hey, just take them first. And me and Dad told them the same thing. Me and Dad were sitting there together. So, man, just take them first. And actually, they were told to come get me and Dad and Clay and leave everybody else. And I was like, man, we can't do that. I was like,
yeah,
we got to get, I said, y'all got plenty of gas at the checkpoint, don't you? He's like, yeah. I was like, man, we got to get everybody out of here.
Yeah.
We can't leave them back here. And so, when it came my and Dad's time to get out, the one guy come up to me, and he was a cool guy, big old tall guy. Mark was his name. He was from Arizona, like a big guy, like 6'5", and kind of guy that you don't want to be with you and if you got into a fight. But he had that look, and so I was like, dude, I was like, man, I'm embarrassed to ask you what I'm fixing to ask, but I said, would you please make sure you get those 2 rounds in that green stock gun? I said, I don't care about nothing else here, because Dad's gun was a 300 Weatherby Magnum, and I mean, I could go into a store and buy a 300 Weatherby anytime.
You're not buying that ram anywhere, and you're not buying that gun.
I ain't buying that Jared or those Rams anywhere else.
Nope.
And so I'll go back just a little bit. As soon as I got out of the helicopter from the crash, I looked and I saw about probably 100, 150 yards away, I saw one of the big tires of the landing gear laying out in the snow, still on the frame where it ripped off the helicopter. And I told Dad, so when something like that happens, you're not worried about missing your flight or 1,000 other things that you could be thinking about. You're focusing on one thing, and that's survival. It's just, what can I do? What I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to look back someday and say, man, if I'd have just thought of this, we would have been fine. And so my mind is just racing, trying to think what we need to do so that somebody can see us. And so I said, we need to get that tire set on fire. And so immediately Clay and the other guide went to working on getting something to get that tire lit. And the problem is, up there, we're above the tree line. We don't have anything to burn except what's ever in the helicopter. So we're burning suitcases, clothes, and they actually burnt our Ibex horns and skull, put it in the fire, and it was just gun cases, anything that would burn, they burn it. If we weren't wearing it, we were burning it pretty much. And another kind of crazy thing that happened, and I think of these things when I'm telling the story a lot of times, just crazy, is that once Dad and Clay got me out of the helicopter and kind of looked down, and there's 3 fingers sticking out of the snow. Can't see nothing else. Now, this is 2 or 3 minutes after the crash.
All right.
Daddy reaches down to just touch the hand and see what's going on, and it grabs his finger.
Yep.
Think about it.
Wow.
They dug him out. It was the translator, got buried, and somehow he was under the edge of the helicopter, buried in the snow, and was fine.
Wow.
He had a scratch on his face, a couple little things, not a broken bone, nothing. Buried in snow. I mean, can you imagine? Daddy said it's one of the weirdest things that ever happened. Here we are, all this.
I'm man from Tennessee.
It's crazy. And all these things that are happening. And I mean, it's hard to smile or laugh about any of it because it was so tragic. And we did have two guys that got killed and people that got hurt really bad. Like I said, I don't know who lived and who didn't. I know some people had injuries that would last a lifetime. But so, it was very tragic. But, it was some of the cool things. Dad and I grew up in the church, and Dad was a Christian. And of course, my mom was a diehard Christian. But there was the first time that Dad and I really ever prayed together. Serious. We got out of Daddy's like, let's just stop a minute and let's just pray. He was just like this, and my dad was one of the finest human beings on the planet, honorable, honest, do anything for anybody. Like I said, he was a Christian, but he didn't he never forced it on me and my sisters or his friends or relatives or anything like that. And if you wanted to talk about it, he'd talk about it. And that's kind of the way I am. I'm not in your face kind of that kind of stuff. But Dad, he definitely recognized that as a time when there was definitely a need for a heart-to-heart prayer. And so we, and I was so thankful, there's just the fact that Dad didn't sit by me when he got on the helicopter that day. And, he looked up, said, Lord, please let him answer me. And I did. And then we prayed after we got out of the helicopter, and we ended up surviving the whole thing. They finally got us out of there, and sitting on a snowmobile for 12 miles with 7 broken ribs is quite the trip. But what's crazy is the ride. We had to get in a 4-wheel drive van to ride from the China border checkpoint to a little village called Nareen. Oh, it was so miserable because there's so many potholes and the roads were so crappy. Every time you hit one of those potholes, it literally just jar your teeth.
Did they have anybody from a medical standpoint evaluate you guys when
Nothing,
you got to the China border?
We got to the border checkpoint, and all that we really. So yes, we could get warm, and we had something to eat and water to drink, which was awesome.
Thank God one of you weren't losing blood.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah,
there's
nothing they could have done. You'd have bled out easy.
Yeah.
And so they had a battery charged up by the time we got out, and so the first thing I did is I called home. And I had taken out MedJet insurance a week before the trip. So I paid $198 for me and Dad for each of us have insurance on this trip. And so they ended up sending in an airplane. I'll get to that here in a minute. And so the first thing I did, Marty answered the phone. I didn't know it, but Channel 2 and Channel 4 from Nashville was at the house. And my brother-in-law actually answered the phone first. And I said, Tim. He said, Spook, is that you? There because they ain't heard from us. And the World News reported that there had been a helicopter crash with hunters in the Tian Shan Mountains of Kyrgyzstan at 14,000 feet, and there was no known survivors, and that there was no rescue party.
Wow! So
Marty was told that we were dead, and she didn't know any different for a day and a half.
She thinks you're dead at this point.
Well, she said,
or assuming that's a high possibility.
She said she never believed it. She said she never believed
God bless
it. She
her.
said, and so she never told the kids.
Okay.
What was being reported. Her said anything to the kids, and I don't know if they said anything to anybody else until they found out for sure. So when I called, they had already found out. So Clay had called his dad and told him that he had gotten out, and then they called Mom.
Okay.
And so then they knew. So then the report was that the 2 U.S. hunters and the Canadian hunter, that the helicopter was about to fall off the mountain, and that we jumped 100 feet into a snowbank out of the helicopter and into a snowbank, and that we were the only survivors. And it was so funny. Coleman was about 9 or 10 years old, and he went to school and said, my dad jumped out of a helicopter 100 feet, you know, and so the rumors were
Yeah.
crazy. But so, anyways, my brother-in-law gets my wife over, and the first thing I said is, I just said, call MedJet, you know. And she said, we've already called them. They got a jet waiting in Beijing, waiting to come get you. As soon as you get to Bishkek, they'll come get you and take you to the hospital and get you home, you know. And so, we talked the camera. They had the news channels were there at the house, and so then they were able to at least report that we had survived and they had gotten us out. And the story was just like never ending. So they get us to the little village of Nareen, which is a third world village that's really kind of uncomprehendable to see what they live like there. The unemployment, they said, was somewhere between 40 and 50%. If you'd asked me, I'd have told you it was 70%.
Wow.
Nobody's doing anything. They did have a little restaurant, and they had a bed and breakfast there, which is where we stayed with the U.S. Border Patrol guys. Now, when we got to Nareen, the embassy had sent in 2 drivers, a translator, and a representative.
Okay. And with the Border Patrol, the guys, were they traveling back with you?
They did end up traveling back with us. So they were there also. So we had good representation there.
Sure.
We go to leave Nareen, headed back to Bishkek to get on the MedJet, and an avalanche. We get about 2 hours out of Nareen, and because of the spring storm and everything that was going on, and it started to thaw, there was an avalanche that was 50 foot deep and a mile long that hit in front of us that blocked the road, and there we were stuck again. So we had to go back to Nareen, and then that's when but at least we had a warm place to stay.
Yep.
We had food to eat.
Thinking positive.
We had representation.
Yep. You still don't, do you know the extent of your injuries at that point?
No idea. They didn't have anything there to do anything. It was so funny. We went to this little medical facility, and they were going to take x-rays, and they didn't have any film. They had one of the old-fashioned film x-ray machines. They slide out, put it in. They didn't even have any film for it. Wow. You know what they had? It was so, looking back, you just can't do anything but laugh, but they had a bottle of mercurochrome. Do you remember?
I don't.
So when I was a kid, if you got a cut or a scrape or a floor burn, you put mercurochrome on it, and it was like a disinfectant treatment. I don't know if it had an antibiotic in it, but it was orange. So it would turn your skin orange, so you would have an orange spot. That's what they put in my cuts. By the time we had gotten to that point, my cuts were starting to heal back on their own, and they all needed stitches, but they didn't. Nobody had anything to stitch them up with. And so they put they did wash it out, and they put mercurochrome. And so, that's what they did. But so we got stuck there. Man, I'm trying to remember. I think we were there for 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 days.
And this is never ending.
Oh, I know. And while we're there, these investigators show up. Supposedly, I don't know who they're supposed to be representing, because the vice president was there in the town also, staying somewhere else. They're sitting there, they're interrogating Dad and I and wanting all this information because they're blaming us for the helicopter crash, and they're wanting us to give them money.
Wow.
Well, so what you're supposed to do, the way it's supposed to work, is when you set up the hunt, you pay your trophy fee to the government when you get back to Bishkek, and you get the importation paperwork that allows you to bring it back in the country, and all that all happens together. Well, they were wanting us to go ahead and give them that money. I said, no. I said, paperwork. They said, Bishkek. I said, no. You get the money when I get the paperwork, because I'd already been told that certain things that they will do to try to extort, money from you and get more money. So you said, we're not going to do that. So then they tried to put pressure on us by making threats that they were going to put us in jail, because the crash was our fault. Well, Dad and Clay got really upset about it. I was like, I ain't worried about it. It's like, we got representation. I got somebody from the American embassy here. I got
Yeah.
three U.S. Border Patrol guys here. I got a translator.
Yeah.
I ain't worried about it at all. And Daddy's like, yeah, you're right. He's like, what do we, I was like, well, just ignore them. I was like, we'll appease them by talking to them and telling them what happened. But I said, I ain't worried about them,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
No, that's smart.
And the three U.S. Border Patrol guys had actually so there was an Army base there in Nareen, and these Border Patrol guys had a pretty good relationship with the captain because they had been there for a while in this training stuff. They's like, yeah, we're good. These guys, they're not going to do anything. So I said, that's
Okay.
all we're worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're good.
They're just trying to shake you up and see how you
Yeah,
respond
that's
too.
what they were
And
doing.
if
They
you
were trying to
panic and
shake
all
us
that.
down. And
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
yeah, that's all it was. And then so then Philip Morris at the MedJet told Mom and Marty that there was a airstrip, an old Russian military airstrip in Nareen that they could land their jet on. Oh man, that's awesome. So I said, take me out there, And admittingly, Brian, it was and this is where I just think it's another one of those situations where being healthy and working out and vitamins and all these things really makes such a huge difference in body recovery. And every day, dude, I would wake up and I was like a lot better. It wasn't one of these deals where you say, hey, how you feeling today? You any better? And you go, maybe, I don't know. Every day, I was a lot better.
I totally believe it.
I mean, but here was the bad side of that was every day Dad was worse. So I think it was kind of a situation where you take a 65-year-old and put him in a football game, and he might do okay if he's in really good shape, but then the next week he can't hardly move.
Well,
he's so sore, And I think that's what happened with Dad. And he was getting discouraged because of the pressure that the investigators were putting on us and the fact it was taking us so long to get out.
Yep.
And we had a lot of people working here trying to help. And I had a buddy that had a relative that worked in the White House. And so they got the word to the head of Special Forces, whoever that was at the time. Shoot, Mark probably knows who it was back then.
Okay.
He called another buddy of mine, and he said, listen, I got to go to Israel. Something crazy had happened in Israel. Somebody had been assassinated or something. He said, I've got to go to Israel. But he said, at any time your buddy thinks his life's in danger, he said, you need to give him this number. He needs to call this number. He said, now listen, I'm telling you this. He said, tell him not to call just because he don't feel good.
Yes.
Or, because he's got a headache or he's mad or anything like that. He's like, if he thinks that his life is in danger at some time, call this number. So we'll go in and get him. Yep. But I hope you can stress to him. He's like, no, he'll get it. He'll get it, So he did. He gave me the number and I had it. And of course, thankfully we didn't have to use it. And I never felt like that was the situation. Had we not had that government representation there from the embassy, I probably would have.
Yeah.
I probably would have. But since we had those guys there, I didn't feel threatened for the most part. Just irritated, but not threatened.
Yeah. So what's the next step how do you get from there to the next phase of getting home?
So I believe it was the 6th day, they called and said, hey, we just pulled 2 service trucks over the avalanche with bulldozers. So we basically built a road ice road over the avalanche. We pulled those 2 trucks over. Y'all want to come out and look at it? And they were trying to load up. I was like, whoa. Everybody was getting in and running out and jumping in the vehicles. I was like, we're not driving. I wasn't in a situation with my ribs. I was like, we're not driving 2.5 hours to look at something. Drive 2.5 hours back, and then 2.5 hours back. I said, we're going to take our stuff with us, which we didn't have very much at that point.
Yep.
So we're taking our stuff with us.
Because we're going.
And I said, if they pull two-ton service trucks over, they can pull 2 4Runners over.
Yep.
I said, we're going to Bishkek tonight.
Yep.
And Dad looked at me. It's so funny. He's like, I think he was so mad at himself for not thinking of stuff like that. Of course, normally that's what Dad would have said and done.
Yep.
But he was catching himself just going along with whatever everybody else thought we should do. And I was like, this is crazy. Let's just carry our stuff with us. So we did. They pulled us over the avalanche. We get to Bishkek at like 2 a.m. So there's a high regency in Bishkek. It's the only modern facility in Bishkek is the High Regency, which the U.S. built, and the American Embassy. And we get in, Dad's like, well, what are we doing now? I was like, I'm ordering room service. I said, I'm ordering everything on the menu. And he laughed. He said, all right. And I couldn't believe they were open. We did. I ordered every single thing that was on the breakfast menu. I ordered eggs, bacon, sausage, pancakes, everything that was on there.
Absolutely. Why not, baby?
They come in there with like 6 trays, and I sat there for 2 hours and ate. I was so hungry and so hungry for American food, you know.
Yep.
Just bacon, eggs, just give bacon and eggs. So the next morning we had a meeting with the ambassador and some of the people from the embassy, and we ate lunch, and they wanted to know what all happened, and we basically just had a gathering. And then we met with the powers that be at Kyrgyzstan that afternoon and give them the rest of their money and got our permits and all that stuff. And then MedJet had flown in.
Okay.
And was waiting there for us. So then we go out to get on. Well, then they stop us. They're not going to let us out of the airport. I literally thought my dad, I think if he could have, he would have struck it he'd have set off a dynamite in that airport. He was so mad.
Yep.
I said, it doesn't do any good. And Clay's hot-headed too. Clay was mad. I said, let's just chill. This is, I called the guy from the embassy. I said, hey, this is what's going on. I'm sitting here looking at the medical jet ready to take it. So they were going to take us to Hong Kong instead of Beijing. Or actually, that's where they came from, was Beijing. And so we're just sitting there, and finally, after about an hour and a half, somebody called, and they let us through. So we got so we had to leave our guns, the sheep, and anything else that we had, which wasn't much past that, at the embassy. And the consultant that set the hunt up said he would take care of getting everything back to the U.S. So we left all that stuff, and we got on the medical jet. Of course, they checked me out, but there wasn't nothing.
I mean, you can't do anything, but you make sure you don't have any internal bleeding.
Yeah. They didn't do a thing. So they took us to Hong Kong.
Yep.
They did take x-rays. That's when they confirmed the broken ribs. It was so funny. You gotta, I don't mean to say make light of it, because it was definitely not a light situation, especially because people got killed, but you just got to do what you can to make the best out of the situation.
Absolutely.
And so we're sitting there, and this nurse is picking my hair, and trying to get into that cuts. And I yelled out and jerked real quick, and she screamed and jumped backwards, and I just busted out laughing. And she looked at me funny, and I was laughing. I was like, I'm okay. And she said, I will get you for that someday. But at that point, we're just like, I don't even know how to explain the relief and disbelief. And I don't know, it just, looking back, it really just seems like a dream. But just being able to survive that, and see what happened, and know that it's kind of like your brother Mark, until you experience something like that, you really don't know how you're going to react. You don't know what you're going to do. And I've always felt like that was one of the, whether you're same way with hunting or with life or family or whatever, there's going to be things that pop up suddenly that happen. A lot of times, can be bad, and you got to make a decision. What's the next move? And with hunting, it's just for fun. You're just for your personal love of hunting, and It's like whether you're moving a ground blind on T-Rex or whatever it is, or whether you're in a life-threatening situation, or like with Mark, somebody shooting at you or whatever it is, you got to decide what your next calculated move is. And just to see that we were finally out of it. And I think the hardest I've ever slept in my life was on the flight from Hong Kong to LA. I slept like 10 or 11 hours. I was just exhausted.
Of course you were. I mean, and there are parts of this story that I didn't even know, Spook, and you and I have talked about it a number of times. But I mean, I think, what you're describing is having the ability to think in a stressful situation and process and not overreact. And you're going to be emotional and you're going to be frustrated, but how to sit back and think through strategically in those situations. And you obviously did that. And, and I'm sure having your dad there, even though the times it was tough on him, was huge. But I mean, all of the in between, it's not like you crashed, went to a hospital, and then flew home.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
not at all.
You had roadblocks, setbacks, progress, setbacks, progress, setbacks, and you just got to keep going and keep focused and getting you to that next spot. Because look, who knows if you wouldn't have made that decision about not paying those people being shut down, what that could have led to. If you said, hey, let's not take our stuff, and you do all of that, how much more delayed you could have been.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
those decisions,
like something I left out just because, I forget some things sometimes, but like Clay ran in there. So Clay was so here was another thing. Clay's brother was getting married during this time, and he was just heck bent on wanting to be home for the wedding. Well, I mean, hey, I hear you, but personally, I don't give a crap about your brother's wedding. I'm worried about us and my dad. And so they come up one day and said, hey, there's some people walking around the avalanche on the side of the mountain. There's a trail. They're walking that trail, and it's about a mile and a half long. And we can have somebody pick you up on the other side. But the guys from the embassy and the Border Patrol guys aren't going. It'd just be you three on your own. What? And so they's wanting to do it, and he's got Daddy talked him to do it.
Mm-mm.
And I told Dad, Dad, we ain't doing that.
No.
I said, you can't hardly walk. I got 7 broken ribs, and there's nobody that's with us here is going to be there. I said, I wouldn't even consider it unless they were going, and especially the 3 Border Patrol guys. I said, if they're not going, we sure as heck ain't going.
Yep.
And so I went to Clay. I said, Clay, Dad's not in condition to walk around that avalanche. And I said, with 7 broken ribs, I said, I don't know what my situation's going to be.
Yeah.
And I said, the fact that nobody's going with us, I said, if you want to go, you can go. I don't know, but this is the American embassy that's furnishing all this opportunity. I don't know. I don't think they'll come get you. And he just looked at me and said, okay, I understand. He was real good about it once I
explained it.
You had to
think through it.
That very day. So when the avalanche, there was a drain. The road was down in between 2 mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So when the avalanche hit, it formed a pocket, and there was a creek in the drainage. It formed a lake. So the avalanche formed a lake in between that very day. A man slid off the side of the mountain into the lake and drowned.
After all y'all went through, like, that's not what you wanted, have to even consider dealing with.
So it was just, I could sit here and tell you, it's like that runway. I went out, so on like the second day, so they wanted some money to buy a battery for the tractor, some gas and oil, and they were going to clear this runway so the jet can land. So we're like, okay, we'll do it. So we give them some money, and so a day and a half, maybe 2 days had gone by, and I asked John, the guy from the embassy, I said, what's going on? I said, oh, well, they're doing it, but it's kind of slow. And I was like, and I could tell he had no idea at the rate they were going when they might finish.
Yeah.
I said, take me out there. I want to see it. So he said, okay. So they took me out there. We pull up there, Brian, and there's about 30, 40 kids, boys. Maybe not that many, maybe 20, 25. They've got an old tractor with a metal sled, and they're scooping and shoveling snow on that sled and taking it and dumping it, going back and forth. And they got a spot about maybe 50 yards long and 20 yards wide. Wow. I said, John, this is what I'm talking about. So they were wanting more money. And so that's why I said, John, you're going to have to take me out there. I got to see what's going on for myself. So go out there, and I was like, John, do you realize how long? I said, the sun is going to melt that snow in 2 weeks before they can get this cleared. I said, at the rate they're going, they cannot get it cleared in 2 weeks. Yeah. So then they said, well, there's a maintenance yard they got bulldozers and road graders and loaders and stuff. I said, okay, take me out there. So then we went there. We pull up there, dude. There's a 5-acre maintenance facility. Tons of equipment. Not a single piece of it would run. Wow. There was a road grader. I saw a pretty shiny yellow road grader, big road grader. I said, yeah, that's all I need right there. He's like, I run that thing? I said, no, but I'll figure it out. I said, I've run every other kind of equipment you can imagine. I can figure it out. And I said, I promise you, I can grade snow off that runway. Yeah. I get up in it. I got to get them to help me up just to get up in it. But like I said, I was getting significantly better every day. Even my ribs weren't poking as bad. Yeah. And so I was getting better. The floorboard's laying full of tools. There's wires everywhere. There's no battery in it. There's no key in it. And I'm just like, and they said what happens is that whenever they tear something up, the government gives them money to fix it instead of taking the money and buying what they need, buying a new battery. They just go rob another piece of equipment to fix that piece. And the only pieces that they had were actually running and working. They had taken them to the avalanche. So there was nothing in this maintenance facility yard. They had dump trucks, bulldozers, road graders, loaders, nothing that would work. Nothing.
So frustrating.
I know. It was just like, I thought I was going to be on the road grader or a loader all day clearing the runway.
Done in 2 hours and we out of here.
I was like, we're going to do it. I said, you're going to tell MedJet to be here in the morning. That didn't work. So it was just that kind of stuff every day. And you'll laugh at me, man. I don't know the right word for it. I won't say stir crazy, but you just get, of course. I was like, we had a way to charge our our satellite phone batteries up. So I think my satellite phone bill was $2,500 when I finally got it. Because, man, when we were stranded there in the rain, man, I was on the phone as a lot just because I was just, I just needed to talk to Marty and talk to my buddies and different things so me and Marty were building a new house at that time. Okay. And so the guy that was helping me with my house, I called him one day and I said, and as soon as he answered the phone, I recognized his voice. I didn't say, hey man, how you doing? This is Spook or nothing. I could hear the hammers in the background. I said, tell them boys just because they thought I was dead don't mean they can stop working on the house. He went, Spook, Spook, and started yelling. It was awesome. I could hear the guys yelling they were putting the rafters up. I could hear him. He was tickled to death that I called him while they were working on the house. So that was pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. So now you make it to LA, and then you guys, how long were you in LA?
I don't remember, but I know I've never been so happy to see Los Angeles in my life. Of course, here's another crazy thing. So we fly from LA to Dallas, and we're going to connect in Dallas to come to Nashville. And we're pulling out on the runway, and he turns around and said, I'm sorry, folks, we're going to have to go back to said one of the stewardesses has raised her head up and hit a cabinet in the back and has busted her head. And we got to take her back to the terminal and get another stewardess.
You going, you
and Daddy just looked at me and he just like, so we got delayed another, I don't know, probably took an hour.
It's just the whole point of
I
it.
know,
Like,
it's just like one thing.
No more.
And so we finally get home and we're walking through the airport in Nashville, and we can see our family, the news channels. They got cameras and lights and signs, welcome home, and balloons and confetti, and the kids. And it's just, there's probably 60 or 70 people there.
Yeah.
All our families are there. Marty's family's there. And it's funny, the people we were walking, they kept looking around. They asked me, said, are we on the plane with somebody famous? I said, not that I know of. And then me and Dad walked up there, and everybody's going crazy. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Very, very memorable. And it was memorable seeing the kids and wrapped around my legs and just tears of joy at that point. And
that's awesome.
Having to make sure nobody hugged me around my body.
Yep.
So yeah, it was and it's funny, later, I think the next year, we were actually on a Dateline NBC call and asked to do something. And so we were on Dateline. And then the show I Shouldn't Be Alive, I don't know if you ever watched that. But
I do. I remember that, yep.
They did a production and a story out of it. And it was funny, the 3 U.S. Border Patrol guys came to our house in White Bluff and visited us while they were doing that.
Cool.
And they did the interview at Mom and Dad's, which was awesome, having them for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And they said we could never have been able to figure out whether these were the 2 luckiest people we've ever met or the 2 unluckiest people we've ever met. But it was an incredible experience.
Incredible story, Spook.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate it that some people died. Obviously, it was very, very sad. We're blessed that any of us lived and survived the whole thing. And then, of course, another really unique thing, and I'm not sure that I quite understand the significance of it right now at this point in my life, and maybe I'll figure it out someday. But, we crashed on March 15th, 2004, and Dad passed away on March 15th, 2020.
Wow.
Kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
It's just unreal, but God gave him 16 more years, and we're very appreciative for that. He lived to be 81, and I miss him so much. He was my best hunting partner, and we did so much together and had so much fun and experiences. But that was definitely the craziest one for sure.
Well, there's no question, and I mean, just as special as I'm sure it was for you to have him there, for him to be there with you as a father, and you're a father, obviously, and to think of the roles in it reversed and at this point in your life, to feel like, you were there and he was there for you to go through that is, got to make him feel good. And, he's looking down upon you now and he's proud, and he's telling that story to other people up there, and how, the 2 of you survived just a crazy sequence of events that at any time could have gone complete other way, my friend.
Oh, for sure. And I think Dad, of course, obviously, me and Dad loved each other. Dad loved me as a son and respected me as a hunter and a ball player and a father and a Christian and things like that. But I really believe that, I know Dad's level of respect for me went to a whole nother level after that, because he told Mom, he wouldn't tell me. He told Mom, he's like, I don't think I could have made it through it if he hadn't been there. And he was the one hurt the worst. He said, just with everything going on, he said it was so frustrating, get so mad and upset. And he said, Spook just like stayed calm the whole time and made all the right decisions, which I don't know about that. Maybe there's something else we could have done that would have helped. It's just a matter, you just got to figure it out. You just got to, it's just like everyday life. We get dealt some kind of hand that we don't like, and it's not what we would have asked for, but you get dealt. And I really think that's kind of one of the biggest parts of being a man and a Christian and a husband and a father and a hunter is that, life's not going to be perfect. And it's how we deal with it that kind of determines who we are as men, and it's what's going to be remembered. And that's why I just try not to overreact to anything and stay calm and try not to let anything get to me. Negativity and haters and different things like that. It's just part of life, and you just got to roll with it and move on. And
Nope.
this is actually a display that Marty and the kids did for me. It was in Field and Stream. You can see it's funny. It's got
Very
a painting,
cool.
something about George Bush and John Kerry. And here you can actually see this is us before we got on the helicopter. I don't know if you can tell in the video. And then this is the helicopter after it crashed. This is that's a picture of the helicopter after the crash.
Wow.
And that's actually the pilot laying right there. And that's the guy that was sitting beside me is right there. And then this is me outside with my little seat that we made. And
everybody will be posting pictures of these on Instagram and Facebook for you guys to look at as well.
Yeah. So
you can't see it.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel obviously very blessed. God had plans for me to do more, and hopefully I can and help people in some way in the future with things. And I'm very thankful that He gave us Dad for 16 more years.
Yep.
So I'm happy to be here. Very happy.
Well, as you should. And listen, man, there's something too that I'm a firm believer in the way we grew up, our generation, and the way our parents raised us of being tough and resilient and, working young and those things, they make you have a little, I believe, extra edge in the sense of when things get tough, you can work through some of those things and you don't give up and you strategize and just, again, some of that grit that helps you and helped you. It's helped me in my life go through things. I know it's helped my brother and many others of people we grew up around and we grew up with that have that same kind of country grit that I so respect and try to instill in my boys and my daughter as much. And I know you do with your kids as well.
Yeah, I really believe that growing up in a lifestyle and an atmosphere and surroundings that you see things happen and you experience things and you figure out how to deal with it. I think sometimes in today's society, sheltered so much from real life things and from troubles and whatever that when they begin to face them later on in life, especially say in high school or college or when they get out into the real world, they have a hard time coping with it because they've never really seen it,
Absolutely.
So, growing up in an atmosphere out in the country with my dad running a business and working hard every day and hunting and fishing and figuring things out. And like I said, whether you're you could be fishing and you say, hey, they're not hitting this. We got to change. And this is what I think we should change to. And you throw out there and you catch 2 or 3. It doesn't seem comparable to what we're talking about, but it is because it's whether you're making a decision to move a tree stand or this or that, it's all part of changing what you're doing to meet the needs of the moment. And it's the same way when there's a catastrophe. You got to make a decision when there's a tornado coming. Where are you going to go? Where am I going to get? Because if I don't get in the right spot, me and my family might die. And so it's just those things, those decisions you have to make. You get woke up in the middle of the night, something's going on. Where's you going? What are you going to do? How are you going to react? And I think that's not everybody handles that the right way, and sometimes there's not a right way, but it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a crash or this or that. I mean, we've seen some people do some miraculous things over the years that saved people's lives, pilots and different things, and your brothers experienced lots of craziness, I know. And just being able to grow up in a world where you start out making those decisions in a lower level way, and then it just works its way up into life. It's just, part of our, instincts to survival.
For sure. Well, Spook, what an amazing story, brother, and thank you for sharing that, and obviously happy of the outcome for you and your dad, and obviously thoughts to those that didn't make it, but
Yeah,
I'm glad you shared that, because I think that's just another side of your life that fit into the hunting, but you were dealt in with a life threatening situation, and how do you work with it? And I think it adds to your character, brother. It
I
just says
appreciate it.
a lot about who you are and how you're wired and you work. And
No problem. I'm happy to be able to tell it.
no, I know you are.
Yeah,
Well, like I said, we'll have pictures that we can share. Might be pictures of pictures, but we'll be
yeah,
posting as much of that so you guys can see. If you've got questions about the accident and you want to message Spook or comment, please do. And I know he'll get back to you and share that. But
for sure.
God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
And thank you again, everybody, for listening. And what a great and amazing story.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks everybody for listening.